They strapped him to the table. The needles were ready. The clock showed 47 minutes until death. But Marcus Cole wasn't praying. He wasn't crying. He was whispering one word over and over. Titan. His last wish before execution wasn't food, wasn't forgiveness, wasn't freedom. He begged to see his military working dog one final time. The warden thought it was sentimental nonsense. The guards expected a tearful goodbye. But when that German shepherd walked into the room and saw Marcus, he didn't run to him. He growled. And what happened next broke every rule the Navy ever wrote. Before we continue, hit subscribe and follow this story to the very end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Marcus Cole had 47 minutes left to live. He knew because the clock on the wall hadn't stopped ticking since they moved him into the final holding room at Fort Avery Naval Brig. Every second echoed off the concrete like a hammer striking bone. The guards stood at their posts, rigid, avoiding eye contact. They always did on execution days. Nobody wanted to look a dead man in the eyes. Marcus sat on the edge of the steel bench, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tight his knuckles had gone white. His breathing was slow, controlled. The kind of breathing they taught you in BUD/S training, when the ocean was crushing your chest and the instructors were screaming that you were going to die. He wasn't afraid. That was the part that unsettled the guards most. "Never seen one this calm," the younger guard muttered, shifting his weight from one boot to the other. The older one, a sergeant named Womack, who had worked death row for 19 years, didn't look up from his clipboard. "The calm ones are worse, trust me." Marcus heard them. He heard everything. The ventilation humming through the ceiling, the distant clang of a steel door closing 3 corridors away, the faint crackle of a radio on someone's belt. His senses had never dulled, not in prison, not in 3 years of solitary confinement, not even now, 46 minutes from the needle. But his mind wasn't here. It was 7,000 miles away, in a bombed-out compound in the Korengal Valley, kneeling in dust and blood, with his hands on a dead man's chest and a dog barking so loud it shattered the night. The steel door buzzed. Marcus didn't flinch. Warden Harold Graves stepped through, flanked by a military chaplain and a prison psychologist. Graves was a thick man, mid-60s, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from the same concrete as the walls. He carried a clipboard and the expression of someone who had signed too many death warrants to feel anything about this one. "Marcus Cole," Graves announced. "You will be escorted to the execution chamber in approximately 45 minutes. Do you have any final requests beyond the one already submitted?" Marcus lifted his head slowly. His eyes, dark, hollow, but eerily steady, met the warden's. "No, sir. Just the one." Graves nodded. He already knew. Everyone in the brig knew. It had been the only thing anyone talked about for a week. Marcus Cole, former Navy SEAL, former canine handler, convicted murderer of his own teammate, wanted to see his retired military working dog before he died. "The animal is en route," Graves said flatly. "He'll have 10 minutes, supervised. You will remain restrained. The dog will be leashed. This is not a reunion, Cole. This is a controlled visit." "Understood." Graves turned to leave, then stopped. He didn't look back, but his voice dropped half a register. "For what it's worth, I've never had a condemned man ask for a dog." "He's not just a dog, sir." Graves paused for one beat. Then he walked out. The chaplain lingered, clutching a Bible with both hands like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Son, would you like to pray?" Marcus shook his head. "I've been talking to God for 3 years, Father. He knows where I stand." The chaplain opened his mouth, closed it, and quietly left. Marcus exhaled. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a very long time. He was going to see Titan. After 3 years of concrete and silence and counting ceiling cracks at 2 a.m, he was going to see the only living thing on Earth that had ever truly known him. And that terrified him more than dying. Because the last time Titan saw him, the dog was barking, wild, desperate, furious, as military police dragged Marcus away in handcuffs and blood. Just 3 years earlier, Korangal Valley, Afghanistan. The mission was supposed to be clean. Marcus and his 6-man SEAL team had been briefed at 0300, a high-value weapons cache hidden in an abandoned compound. Intel suggested minimal resistance. Get in, confirm the cache, call for extraction. Textbook. Titan was with him. Always was. The German shepherd moved through darkness like smoke, silent, precise, his tan and black coat blending into shadow. Marcus had trained him from a trembling rescue pup that flinched at loud noises into the most decorated combat tracking dog in naval special warfare history. Their bond was the kind other operators talked about in hushed tones. Not sentimental, deeper. The kind forged in firefights and blood and long nights in the desert, when the only warmth came from a dog pressing his body against yours while mortars shook the earth. Titan had saved Marcus's life twice. Once in Helmand Province, when a buried IED triggered early, and Titan dragged Marcus behind a wall by his vest strap. Once in Ramadi, when a sniper had Marcus pinned, and Titan tracked the shooter's position by scent alone, leading the team to a third-floor window nobody had cleared. Marcus owed that dog everything, and everyone who served with them knew it. But that night in the Korangal, everything went wrong. Marcus entered the compound's east corridor with Titan on point. The dog moved ahead, nose working, tail rigid. Standard procedure. But 30 seconds in, Titan stopped. Dead stop. His ears pinned forward, his body dropped low. A growl rumbled from his chest, not loud, but deep enough that Marcus felt it in his own ribcage. Marcus raised his fist. The team halted behind him. "What do you see, boy?" Marcus whispered. Titan didn't move. His eyes locked on a doorway at the end of the corridor. His lips pulled back just enough to show teeth. Then Marcus heard it. A voice. Not Pashto, not Dari. English. Before he could process it, Sergeant Ryan Torres, Marcus's closest friend on the team, the man who'd been his swim buddy through Hell Week, pushed past him. "Torres, hold!" Marcus hissed. But Torres was already through the doorway. 3 seconds of silence. Then a gunshot cracked through the compound like God-splitting stone. Marcus charged forward. Titan exploded beside him, barking. That sharp, desperate bark that meant, "Danger, danger, everything is wrong." Marcus hit the doorway, and his boots slipped. Blood. Torres was on the ground, chest open, eyes staring at nothing. Marcus dropped to his knees, pressing his hands against the wound, screaming for a medic. Then something hit him from behind. A blade punched into his left shoulder, just below the collarbone. White hot. He gasped, tried to turn, but a hand grabbed his collar, and the voice hissed directly into his ear. "Stay down, or the dog dies." Marcus froze. Not because of the pain, because of Titan. The dog was 3 feet away, barking so hard his whole body shook, and the shadow behind Marcus was pointing something at the German shepherd's head. Then, another gunshot. The shadow vanished. Boots pounded concrete. Titan lunged into the darkness, chasing something only he could see. Marcus collapsed beside Torres. Blood, his and Torres's, pooled together on the floor. He tried to speak, tried to scream, but his vision was tunneling, the edges going black, and the last thing he heard before the world disappeared was a voice, calm, authoritative, familiar, saying, "Cole did it. Cole shot Torres." And then hands were on him, handcuffs, shouting, Titan barking somewhere far away, barking like his heart was being ripped out. Darkness. The military tribunal lasted 4 days. The evidence was devastating. Marcus's suppressed pistol had been fired. Ballistics matched the bullet that killed Torres. Marcus was found kneeling over the body, covered in blood. His knife, the one every SEAL carried, was missing, presumably discarded after the struggle. The prosecution called 6 witnesses. Every member of Marcus's own team testified that he had been acting erratically for weeks. Paranoid, aggressive. They said Torres had confronted Marcus about his behavior, and Marcus had snapped. But the detail that sealed Marcus's fate, the image that played on every news channel, that was printed on every front page, that turned public opinion into a tidal wave of hatred, was Titan. When military police arrived at the compound, Titan was standing over Torres's body, barking at Marcus. Not beside Marcus, not protecting Marcus, barking at him. The prosecution played the body camera footage 14 times during the trial. 14 times the jury watched a loyal military working dog apparently turning on his own handler. "If the dog doesn't trust him," the lead prosecutor said, leaning toward the jury, "why should any of us?" Marcus said the same thing every day, every hearing, every appeal. "I didn't kill him. Someone else was there. Titan saw it." Nobody believed him. The compound had been swept. No additional footprints, no unaccounted DNA, no evidence of a third party. And Titan, the only witness who could have told the truth, couldn't speak. The verdict came in under 3 hours. Guilty. Murder of a fellow service member during combat operations. The maximum penalty under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Death. Torres's family demanded it. The Navy needed it. The public expected it. And Marcus Cole, the man who had served 7 combat deployments and earned a Silver Star, was marched into Fort Avery Naval Brig to wait for the needle. Titan was reassigned to a new handler, a young lieutenant named Jenna Park. The dog was retired from active duty within 6 months. Too old, too slow, too haunted by whatever had happened that night. And Marcus, alone in a concrete box, staring at a ceiling he'd memorized down to every crack and water stain, stopped fighting. Not because he was guilty, because the only one who knew the truth had been taken from him. 41 minutes now. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes. The memories were always worse on days like this. Days when the walls felt thinner and the ghosts pressed closer. A radio crackled outside his holding room. The younger guard pressed his earpiece. "Copy that. The vehicle just cleared the main gate." Marcus's hands dropped. His chest tightened. Titan was here. Womack noticed the change, the way Marcus's breathing shifted, the way his jaw clenched, the way his fingers curled into fists against his knees. Not aggression, something rawer. "Easy, Cole," Womack said quietly. "It's just a visit." Marcus didn't answer. His throat had closed. 3 years. 3 years since he'd seen those dark eyes, felt that coarse fur, heard that bark that meant, "I'm here, I'm with you, wherever you go, I go." He pressed his hand against the left side of his chest, just below the collarbone, where a scar he barely remembered sat hidden beneath his prison shirt. He didn't know why he touched it. Instinct. The same instinct that had kept him alive through 7 deployments and 3 years of hell. The door buzzed. Footsteps, multiple. The controlled rhythm of military boots and something else. The soft click of claws on concrete. Marcus stood up. The chains pulled tight. His heart slammed against his ribs. The door opened. Lieutenant Jenna Park stepped through first, gripping a leash with both hands. Behind her, moving with the slow, deliberate grace of a soldier who had seen too many wars, came Titan. The German shepherd was older. Gray dusted his muzzle. His gait was stiffer, favoring his right hip. But his eyes, those sharp, ancient, knowing eyes, were exactly the same. Marcus couldn't breathe. "Titan," he whispered. "Hey, boy, it's me." The dog stopped at the threshold. His ears rotated forward. His nostrils flared, pulling air in sharp, rapid bursts. For one perfect, suspended moment, the world held its breath. Then Titan growled. Not a greeting, not recognition. A deep, rolling, dangerous sound that vibrated through the metal walls and turned every guard's blood to ice. Park jerked the leash. "Titan, easy, easy, boy." But the dog didn't stop. His lips peeled back. His body dropped into a stance Marcus knew better than anyone alive. The same stance Titan took before he launched at a threat. "Back up, Cole!" Womack shouted, hand flying to his belt. Marcus didn't move. Couldn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the only being he had ever loved, without condition, without question, without limit. And that being was looking at him like he was a stranger. "Why?" Marcus whispered, his voice cracking for the first time in 3 years. "Titan, what's wrong?" It's me, boy." Titan's growl deepened, but he didn't lunge. He didn't attack. Instead, he did something that made Park's face drain of color. He began to circle Marcus, slowly, methodically, his nose working in rapid, deliberate passes, sniffing the air around Marcus's arms, his back, his neck. Park's grip tightened on the leash, her knuckles white. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" Graves demanded from the doorway. "What's happening?" Park swallowed hard. Her voice came out barely above a breath. "He's not growling at Marcus. He's not threatening him." She looked up, and the expression on her face sent a chill through every person in the room. "He's investigating him. Titan thinks Marcus is a crime scene." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. And in the silence, the old German shepherd pressed his nose against Marcus Cole's left shoulder, directly over a scar no one had ever questioned, and barked once. Sharp, immediate, absolute. The bark of a dog who had just found what he'd been searching for 3 long years. That single bark hung in the air like a gunshot nobody could take back. Park dropped to one knee beside Titan, her hands trembling against the leash. The dog pressed his nose harder into Marcus's shoulder, sniffing with the kind of intensity she had only seen during live operations, when Titan was tracking explosives or identifying a body buried under rubble. "What is he doing?" Graves demanded again, stepping closer. Park didn't answer immediately. She was watching Titan's breathing pattern. The short, sharp inhales, the way his nostrils flared and contracted in a rhythm she'd been trained to read. Her face went pale. "He's alerting," she said. "Full scent alert, on Marcus's shoulder." Alerting to what? Park looked up at the warden, and her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. A wound. An old wound. Titan is trained to detect injuries associated with combat trauma. Knife wounds, shrapnel, blast damage. He's telling us something happened to Marcus's shoulder that doesn't match his file. Womack stepped forward. His file says shrapnel, IED fragment from a previous deployment. Titan doesn't alert on shrapnel, Park said firmly. I've worked with him for 3 years. He knows the difference. He's alerting on a stab wound. The room went dead silent. Marcus stood frozen, chains hanging from his wrists, staring down at the dog circling him. His left hand drifted to his shoulder, the spot Titan kept pressing his nose into. He'd touched that scar 1,000 times in his cell, tracing it with his fingertips in the dark, always feeling like it held a secret his mind refused to unlock. Cole. Graves's voice was harder now. How did you get that scar? Marcus swallowed. I don't remember. You don't remember getting stabbed? I don't remember most of that night. The doctors said it was trauma-induced amnesia. The tribunal didn't care. They had their evidence. Titan barked again, 2 sharp bursts this time, and pulled away from Marcus. But he didn't retreat. He circled back around and sat directly in front of him, spine straight, eyes locked upward, tail perfectly still. Park covered her mouth with her hand. What now? Graves snapped. That's his identification posture, Park said, her voice shaking. He sits like that when he's confirmed a match. He's not identifying Marcus as a threat, Warden. He's identifying him as a victim. Womack let out a breath like he'd been punched. A victim? Titan is saying that whatever happened to Marcus's shoulder is connected to the crime scene. The same scent profile, the same trauma signature. Park stood up slowly, her eyes wide. He's saying Marcus didn't attack anyone that night. Marcus was attacked. Graves stared at her for a long, dangerous moment. Lieutenant, do you understand what you're suggesting? This man was convicted by a military tribunal. 6 witnesses, ballistic evidence, body camera footage. I understand, sir. But Titan has never given a false alert. Not once. Not in training, not in combat, not in 3 years of working with me. His record is perfect. A dog's nose isn't evidence. With respect, sir, it has been. Titan's identifications have been admitted in 11 military proceedings. He's identified bomb makers, weapons smugglers, and murder suspects that forensic teams missed. The Navy trusted his nose enough to send him into combat. You can trust it now. Graves opened his mouth to respond, but Titan cut him off. The dog lunged forward, not at Marcus, but toward the door, and let out a bark so loud and sharp it echoed down the corridor like an alarm. Every guard in the room reached for their weapon. What the hell is he doing? Womack shouted. Park held the leash with both hands, feet sliding on the concrete as Titan pulled. He wants out. He's tracking something. Tracking what? There's nothing out there but guards and concrete. Titan spun back toward Marcus, sniffed his shoulder one more time, then whipped toward the door again, barking frantically. His body vibrated with urgency. The same desperate energy Marcus remembered from that night in the Korengal, when Titan had tried to chase the shadow that disappeared through the back exit. And just like that, like a dam cracking under pressure it was never built to hold, a memory broke through. Marcus staggered, his knees buckled. He grabbed the steel bench to keep from falling, and his eyes went distant, unfocused, locked on something only he could see. Cole, Graves barked. What's wrong with you? Marcus didn't hear him. He was back in the compound, the corridor, the blood, Torres on the ground, and then the hand on his collar, the blade sliding into his shoulder, the voice low and controlled. hissing words he hadn't been able to remember for 3 years. But now he could. Stay down, or the dog dies. Marcus's eyes snapped back to the present. His chest heaved. Sweat ran down his temples. "Someone stabbed me," he said. His voice was raw, stripped bare. "That night, in the compound, someone came from behind, put a blade in my shoulder, and told me if I moved, they'd kill Titan." Graves narrowed his eyes. "You've never mentioned this before." "Because I couldn't remember. The trauma. The doctor said my brain locked it out. But Titan remembers." Marcus looked down at the dog. He's been trying to tell someone for 3 years. Titan pressed his head against Marcus's leg and whined, a sound so full of grief and relief that Park had to look away. Graves paced 3 steps left, 3 steps right. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. Even if that's true, even if someone else was in that compound, it doesn't change the ballistics. Your weapon killed Torres. "My weapon was fired," Marcus said. "That's all the evidence proves, not who pulled the trigger. You were the only one holding it." "Was I?" Marcus's voice hardened. "I was stabbed from behind, Warden. I was on the ground, bleeding out. Anyone could have taken my sidearm and fired it. Anyone." Graves stopped pacing. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Titan broke it. The dog turned his head sharply toward the observation window, a reinforced glass panel that separated the holding room from the corridor where a half-dozen military police officers stood watching. His ears pinned forward, his nostrils flared, and then he growled again. But not at Marcus. At the window. Park felt the leash vibrate in her hands. "Warden." "I see it." "He's picking up a scent from one of the MPs in the corridor." "That's impossible. Those officers weren't anywhere near Afghanistan." "One of them might have been." Graves turned to the window. 6 officers stood in a line, all in uniform, all rigid, all watching the scene with the same trained blankness. But one of them, a broad-shouldered staff sergeant near the end of the line, had shifted his weight. Just slightly. Just enough. Titan barked at the glass 3 times, hard and fast. Park's blood ran cold. "That's a triple alert. I've only seen him do that twice, both times on confirmed hostiles." "Which one?" Graves asked. Park followed Titan's sightline. "End of the line, the staff sergeant." Graves leaned toward the glass. "Identify yourself." The officer's jaw tightened. "Staff Sergeant Dominic Vance, sir. Military police, assigned to this facility for 18 months. Prior deployments?" A pause. Half a second too long. "Various, sir." "Were you ever stationed in Afghanistan?" Vance's eyes flickered. "That's classified." Titan slammed his paws against the glass and barked so violently that 2 officers in the corridor jumped backward. Vance didn't jump. He froze. The kind of freeze that only guilty men produce. The stillness of someone calculating their next lie. Marcus stared at Vance through the glass. Something twisted in his gut. He didn't recognize the face, but something deeper, something beneath memory, beneath thought, something animal and instinctive, screamed that he knew this man. "Bring him in," Marcus said quietly. Graves turned. "You don't give orders here, Cole." "Then give the order yourself, because that dog just told you Vance is connected to the night Torres died, and you've got 36 minutes before you execute a man who might be innocent." The words hit the room like a freight train. Graves stared at Marcus. Marcus stared back. Neither blinked. Titan sat between them, perfectly still, ears forward, eyes burning, a soldier awaiting his commander's decision. Graves lifted his radio. "Bring Staff Sergeant Vance into the holding room. Now." The corridor erupted in confused movement. Two MPs grabbed Vance by the arms. He didn't resist, but his face had changed. The professional blankness was gone. Something darker had replaced it. Something cornered. The door buzzed. Vance was escorted in. The moment his boots crossed the threshold, Titan exploded. The German shepherd lunged forward, barking with a ferocity that shook the walls, teeth bared, every muscle in his body coiled to attack. Park threw her entire weight into the leash, boots skidding, shouting, "Titan, hold! Hold!" Vance stumbled backward into the guards behind him. "Get that animal away from me!" "Stand still," Graves commanded. "Everyone, stand still." Titan stopped lunging, but didn't stop growling. He dropped into a low crouch, eyes locked on Vance with the precision of a rifle scope. His breathing was rapid, controlled. His lips trembled over exposed teeth. Park knelt beside him, one hand on his flank. She could feel his heartbeat, fast but steady. Not panic, purpose. "He's doing a live identification," she said, her voice barely holding together. "He's matching Vance's scent to the trauma profile from Marcus's shoulder wound." Vance's face drained of color. "This is insane. I don't know what that dog thinks he smells, but I've never—" "Titan," Park's voice cut through like a blade. "Show me." The dog rose, moved toward Vance in a slow, deliberate arc, sniffing the air around his hands, his sleeves, his belt. Then Titan sat, directly in front of Vance. Same posture as before, spine straight, eyes locked, tail still. Identification confirmed. Park looked at Graves. "Match. Positive match. Titan is saying Vance carries the same scent signature as the person who injured Marcus." Vance's breathing accelerated. "You're taking a dog's word over my service record?" Marcus stepped forward, chains clinking. "Titan doesn't know your service record. He knows your scent, and he never forgets." "This is a setup. Cole trained that dog." "He could have." "I haven't seen Titan in 3 years, Marcus said, his voice low and deadly calm. "I've been in solitary confinement. You want to explain how I trained him from a concrete box?" Vance's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Titan growled one more time, low, final, absolute. The growl of an old soldier who had waited 1,000 days to deliver his testimony. And in Dominic Vance's eyes, something shattered. The mask cracked. The lies buckled. His shoulders dropped 2 inches, and his hands that had been steady through every denial, began to shake. "You were there," Marcus whispered. "You were in that compound." Vance stared at the floor. His jaw clenched so hard the muscles in his neck stood out like cables. Everyone in the room held their breath. 34 minutes until execution. And the dog wasn't finished. Vance's silence lasted exactly 11 seconds. Marcus counted. Old habit. In combat, 11 seconds of silence after a question meant the person was building a lie. Titan knew it too. The dog's growl dropped an octave lower, pressing into the quiet like a blade turning slowly in a wound. "Vance," Graves said, "I asked you a question. Were you in that compound the night Sergeant Torres was killed?" Vance's eyes darted left, then right, then to the door behind him, where 2 MPs blocked the exit with their arms folded. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Just a concrete room, a dying man's chains, and a dog who remembered everything. "I want a lawyer," Vance said. "You'll get one," Graves replied. "After you answer me." "That's not how this works, Warden. I have rights." Marcus laughed. It came out broken, sharp, ugly. Rights. You want to talk about rights. I've been on death row for 3 years for something I didn't do, and you want to talk about rights? Shut up, Cole. Make me. Titan barked once, hard. Both men flinched. Park tightened her grip on the leash and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even herself. Warden, we have 29 minutes. If there's any chance at all, that this man is connected to Torres's death, you cannot proceed with the execution. Graves rubbed his jaw. She was right, and he knew it. Every person in that room knew it. The legal liability alone would end his career. But stopping an execution required more than a dog's bark and an inmate's recovered memories. It required evidence, testimony, something concrete. "Vance," Graves said, his voice dropping to a register that left no room for negotiation. "I'm going to ask you one more time. And before you answer, understand that Lieutenant Park's canine has a verified identification record that has been admitted as evidence in 11 military proceedings. If you lie to me now, and the truth comes out later, and it will come out, you won't just face charges. You'll face them with a perjury count stacked on top. So think very carefully." Vance's Adam's apple bobbed. His hands, cuffed in front of him now, trembled against his belt buckle. "Were you in that compound?" The trembling stopped. Vance's jaw locked. His eyes went flat, the dead-eyed stare of a man who had just decided to burn everything down rather than go down alone. "Yeah," he said. "I was there." The room didn't gasp. It imploded. Womack took a half-step backward. 2 guards exchanged looks of raw disbelief. Park's hand tightened on Titan's collar until her fingers went white. Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. 3 years of concrete walls, 3 years of screaming the truth into silence, 3 years of being called a liar, a murderer, a traitor. And now, 30 feet from the needle, someone was finally saying what he'd known all along. "Keep talking," Graves ordered. Vance licked his lips. The raid Cole was sent on that night. It wasn't what he thought. It wasn't what Torres thought either. The weapons cache was real, but it was ours. Our guys put it there. Whose guys? Task Force Obsidian, off-books unit. We ran operations the official chain of command didn't know about. Weapons transfers to local militias, intelligence trades, things that kept our sector numbers looking good, while the brass in Washington got their promotion stats. Marcus felt his stomach turn. "You were selling weapons." "We were redistributing assets," Vance snapped. Then he caught himself, swallowed. "Call it what you want. It worked. Our sector had the lowest casualty rates in the region for 2 straight years. Command loved us. They didn't ask questions. Until Torres found out," Park said quietly. Vance's eyes dropped to the floor. Torres stumbled into the wrong room, saw the inventory logs, serial numbers that matched weapons we'd reported destroyed. He confronted us, told us he was going to report everything to JAG. "And you killed him," Marcus said. "I didn't kill him," Vance's voice cracked. "I didn't pull the trigger. I swear on my life, Cole, I didn't shoot Torres." Titan growled sharply, and Vance flinched like the sound had physical weight. "Then who did?" Graves demanded. Vance hesitated. His mouth worked silently, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide if the fall was survivable. "Who pulled the trigger, Vance?" "You don't understand what you're asking me. The people involved, they're not prison guards. They're not staff sergeants. They're—" "Who?" Vance closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I was the cleanup guy. My job was to make sure the scene pointed at Cole. I staged his weapon, repositioned the body, wiped prints. When Cole showed up with a dog, everything went sideways. He wasn't supposed to be in that part of the compound. The timeline got compressed. Torres was already dying when Cole walked in. Marcus's voice came out strangled. "You stabbed me." Vance nodded slowly. "You were trying to help Torres. You were on your knees, pressing on his chest, screaming for a medic. I came from behind, put the blade in your shoulder to make it look like a struggle, like Torres had fought back before you shot him." "And Titan?" Vance glanced at the German shepherd. The dog stared back with eyes that held no mercy. "The dog went crazy, started barking, lunging, trying to get to me. I told you I'd kill him if you moved. You stopped fighting, went limp. That's when I took your pistol and—" He stopped. "And what?" Park pressed. "And fired it, into the wall, to put residue on Cole's hands and a discharge on his weapons record. The bullet that killed Torres was already in him before Cole entered the room." The words landed like a bomb, detonating in slow motion. Every person in the room felt the shockwave. Marcus's legs gave out. He sank onto the steel bench, chains pooling around his ankles, and pressed both hands against his face. He didn't cry. His body had forgotten how. But something inside him, something that had been clenched tight as a fist for 3 years, released. Not relief, not yet. Something more fragile. The first crack of light under a door that had been sealed shut since the night they dragged him away in handcuffs. "If you didn't shoot Torres," Graves said, his voice barely controlled, "then who did?" Vance shook his head. "I can't." "You're already confessing to conspiracy, evidence tampering, and assault with a deadly weapon. You think holding back the shooter's name saves you?" "It's not about saving me. It's about—" Vance swallowed hard. "You don't know who these people are." "Try me." Vance looked at Marcus, really looked at him. And for the first time, something human broke through the fear. Something that might have been regret. "I didn't know they'd push for death, Cole. None of us did. The plan was to get you a prison sentence, enough to keep you quiet, enough to bury the investigation. But Torres's family, they pushed for the maximum. And by then, we couldn't walk it back without exposing everything." "So you let me die," Marcus said through his hands. "You watched them strap me to a countdown, and you let me die." "I'm sorry." "Don't." Titan moved. The dog crossed the space between them, pressed his body against Marcus's legs, and laid his head across Marcus's knee. Not alerting, not investigating, just being there. The way he used to after a bad mission, when Marcus would sit in the dark and shake, and Titan would press against him until the shaking stopped. Marcus dropped one hand onto Titan's head. His fingers sank into the familiar coarse fur. "Good boy," he whispered. "Good boy." Park wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and turned to Graves. "Warden, you have a full confession from an accomplice. You have a canine identification. You have recovered testimony from the condemned. You cannot proceed." Graves was already reaching for his radio. "This is Warden Graves. I need an emergency stay on execution case number Mike Charlie 0471. Authorization code November Bravo 77. New evidence has surfaced. Repeat, new evidence. Hold all proceedings." Static. Then a voice. "Copy, Warden. Stay confirmed. The clock is stopped." 22 minutes had been left. Marcus heard the words but couldn't process them. The clock is stopped. 3 words that meant his heart would keep beating past this hour. 3 words that would have meant everything if they'd come 3 years ago. Graves holstered his radio and turned back to Vance with the controlled fury of a man who had almost executed an innocent soldier on his watch. "You said you can't name the shooter. I'm telling you, you will." Because in about 15 minutes, this facility is going to be crawling with JAG investigators, and you're going to want to be the man who cooperated, not the man who covered for a killer." Vance stared at the wall. His breathing was shallow, rapid, the breathing of a man doing math in his head, calculating which betrayal would cost him less. "He'll kill me," Vance whispered. "He won't get the chance." "You don't know him." "Then tell me." Titan lifted his head from Marcus's knee. His ears rotated, his nostrils flared. He sniffed the air, not toward Vance this time, but toward the corridor beyond the door. His body went rigid. His tail dropped flat. His lips peeled back, and a growl rose from his chest that was different from every growl before. Deeper, darker. The growl of a dog who had just caught the scent of something that terrified him. Park felt it through the leash like an electric current. "Warden." "I see it." "He's alerting again, but not on Vance." "Then on who?" Titan lunged toward the door, barking with a violence that sent 2 guards scrambling sideways. The sound was raw, desperate, furious. The same bark Marcus remembered from the compound. The bark he'd heard in his nightmares for 1,000 nights. The bark that meant the real threat was close. Footsteps in the corridor. Measured. Authoritative. The kind of footsteps that made junior officers straighten and enlisted men shut their mouths. The door opened. Commander Gerald Briggs stepped through. He was tall, silver-haired, squared away in his dress uniform with ribbons stacked 4 rows deep. He carried himself with the rigid confidence of a man who had commanded respect for 30 years and never once had it questioned. He was the highest-ranking officer at Fort Avery. He was the man who had personally supervised Marcus's tribunal. He was the man who had signed the final recommendation for the death penalty. And Titan, the old, tired, gray-muzzled German shepherd who had been calm enough to lay his head on Marcus's knee just moments ago, was trying to tear through the leash to get to him. "Control that animal," Briggs said, his voice flat and hard. Park hauled Titan back with everything she had. "Sir, Commander, he's alerting. Full alert. On you." Briggs's expression didn't change. Not one muscle. "The dog is old and confused. He's been in a high-stress environment for the past hour. His reactions are unreliable." "His reactions have never been unreliable," Park shot back, then caught herself. "Sir." Briggs turned to Graves. "Warden, I received word you've issued a stay. On what grounds?" "New testimony. Staff Sergeant Vance has confessed to involvement in the Torres murder. Physical evidence is being reassessed." Vance's word. Briggs looked at Vance the way a man looks at an insect on his shoe. A disgraced enlisted man making desperate claims to save his own skin.
"That's your evidence?"
"It's a start," Graves said carefully. "Combined with the canine identification." "A dog's bark is not evidence, Warden. It's noise." Titan barked again, so loud, so sharp, so full of raw fury that Briggs took an involuntary half-step backward. It lasted less than a second, but Marcus saw it. Park saw it. Vance saw it. And Vance laughed. A broken, hollow, exhausted laugh. "That's him," he said. Every head turned. Vance was looking directly at Briggs. "That's who gave the order. That's who shot Torres. Commander Gerald Briggs ran Task Force Obsidian. He's the one who pulled the trigger that night. And he's the one who told us to pin it on Cole." Briggs didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained ice. "This man is a confessed criminal trying to reduce his sentence by making accusations against a superior officer. This is beneath response." But Marcus was standing now, chains tight, eyes locked on Briggs with something harder than anger. Recognition.
"It was your voice," Marcus said slowly. "In the compound. After I went down. After Vance stabbed me. I heard someone say, 'Cole did it. Cole shot Torres.' I couldn't place it then. I couldn't remember. But I know that voice." He took one step toward Briggs. "It was you." Titan sat between them, perfectly still, eyes burning. Every hair on his body raised, every muscle engaged, every instinct screaming the same truth he'd been carrying for 3 years in silence. Briggs looked at the dog. The dog looked back. And for the first time in 30 years of command, Gerald Briggs had nothing to say. Because the witness he thought could never testify had just taken the stand. Briggs recovered fast. 30 years of command had taught him how to absorb a blow without showing the bruise. He squared his shoulders, adjusted his cuffs, and looked at Graves with the practiced calm of a man who had talked his way out of worse. "Warden, this has gone far enough. You have a convicted murderer, a confessed accomplice trying to trade up, and a retired dog that's been barking at everyone in the room for the past hour. None of this constitutes evidence. I came here to ensure the execution proceeded on schedule, and instead I find a circus. The execution has been stayed, Commander. On your authority? On mine. And it holds until JAG reviews the new testimony." Briggs shook his head slowly. "You're making a career-ending mistake, Graves." "Maybe, but I'm not making the mistake of killing an innocent man." The words hung between them like a blade. Briggs's jaw flexed. His eyes, cold, calculating, untouched by anything resembling guilt, swept the room. He was measuring, counting threats, identifying weak points. Marcus recognized the look. He'd seen it 100 times in tactical briefings. Briggs wasn't panicking. He was strategizing. Titan saw it too. The dog hadn't moved from his position between Marcus and Briggs. His body was low, coiled, trembling with a restraint that seemed almost impossible for an animal running on pure instinct. Every few seconds, a growl vibrated through his chest, not loud enough to fill the room, but constant, steady, like a heartbeat made of warning. "Commander," Park said carefully, "can you explain why Titan is alerting on you with the same scent identification he used on Staff Sergeant Vance?" Briggs turned to her with the kind of smile that senior officers give to junior ones who have just overstepped. "Lieutenant, dogs alert on stress hormones. I walked into a room where an execution has been disrupted. A prisoner is unchained, and a confessed criminal is pointing fingers. My stress levels are elevated. That's all your dog is detecting." "With respect, sir, that's not how scent identification works. Titan isn't detecting cortisol. He's detecting a specific scent signature he associates with a specific event. He's matched you to the same trauma profile as Vance. The same profile connected to Marcus Cole's shoulder wound and the Torres crime scene. Then your dog is wrong. He's never been wrong." Briggs's smile disappeared. "There's a first time for everything." Marcus spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a wire pulled taut. "Tell me something, Commander. You oversaw my tribunal personally. You sat in that courtroom every single day. The prosecution's case, the witnesses, the ballistics report, all of it passed through your office before it reached the jury." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "That's standard procedure for a case of this magnitude." "Standard procedure. Right." Marcus took a step closer. The chains dragged against concrete. "But here's what I've been thinking about for 3 years. The prosecution said there was no evidence of a third party in the compound. No extra footprints. No unaccounted DNA. No foreign weapons residue. But Vance just told us he was there.
He just told us he staged the scene, tampered with my weapon, and planted evidence. Marcus paused. Let it breathe. Then, how did forensics miss all of that, Commander? Unless someone made sure they did. Graves turned to Briggs. The warden's expression had changed. The careful neutrality, cracking, replaced by something sharper. He raises a valid point, Commander. Forensics on that case was airtight. Suspiciously airtight. If Vance was tampering with the scene, there should have been inconsistencies. Unless the investigation itself was compromised. You're accusing me of interfering with a military investigation? Briggs's voice rose for the first time. I'm a decorated commander with 30 years of service. I've overseen hundreds of cases. And this one put an innocent man on death row, Marcus said. You were found guilty by a jury. A jury that only saw what you wanted them to see. Titan barked, sharp, twice. The sound cracked through Briggs's composure like a hammer hitting glass. His left hand twitched, just barely, just enough, toward his right hip. Womack saw it. Commander, keep your hands where I can see them. Briggs froze. His hand hovered mid-motion. I was adjusting my belt. With respect, sir, keep your hands still. You don't give me orders, Sergeant. In this facility, on execution protocol, I do, sir. The standoff lasted 3 seconds. Then Briggs lowered his hands slowly, deliberately, placing both palms flat against his thighs. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen the reach. Everyone had registered the instinct. Park leaned toward Graves. Warden, Commander Briggs just exhibited the same reflexive behavior as Vance, reaching for a weapon under stress. Combined with Titan's alert, I'm formally requesting that the commander be detained for questioning. You're out of your mind, Briggs snapped. I outrank every person in this room. Rank doesn't outrun evidence, Graves said. He nodded to 2 guards. Secure the commander's sidearm. Don't you dare. Now. The guards approached from both sides. Briggs's body went rigid. For one terrible electric moment, Marcus thought the man would fight. Thought Briggs would reach for the weapon and turn the room into a firefight. Titan thought so too. The dog lunged forward 3 inches, teeth bared, every tendon visible beneath his coat. But Briggs didn't fight. He held still as one guard unholstered his sidearm, and the other stepped back with it. His eyes, though. His eyes burned with a fury that had nothing to do with innocence, and everything to do with control slipping away. You're all going to regret this, Briggs said quietly. Maybe, Graves replied. But at least we'll be alive to regret it. Cole almost wasn't. The sidearm was cleared and placed on a table near the door. Graves turned to Vance. Staff Sergeant, you said Briggs gave the order to frame Cole. You said he pulled the trigger on Torres. Can you provide specifics? Vance looked at Briggs. Briggs looked back. The stare between them was something Marcus recognized from interrogation rooms. The silent negotiation between 2 men deciding whether loyalty or survival mattered more. Survival won. Briggs ran Task Force Obsidian for 4 years, Vance said, his voice flat now, emptied of everything except exhaustion. The weapons pipeline generated millions. Local warlords paid in cash, intelligence, or both. The command chain above Briggs either didn't know or didn't want to know. It was clean on paper, invisible. Until Torres, Park said. Until Torres, Vance nodded. Ryan Torres was a good man. Too good. He found the inventory discrepancies during a routine logistics audit. Started asking questions. Started keeping records. When Briggs found out, he gave Torres one chance to forget what he'd seen. Torres refused. Marcus's throat constricted. Ryan told me he was worried about something. 2 weeks before the raid. He came to me after a briefing, said things didn't add up. Said he was going to dig deeper. I told him to be careful. You should have told him to run, Vance said. What happened that night? Graves pressed. Walk me through it, from the beginning. Vance exhaled. Briggs ordered a meeting at the compound. Told Torres it was a debrief, off the record. Torres showed up alone. Briggs tried to negotiate, offered Torres money, a transfer, a promotion. Torres told him to go to hell. Said he was going to JAG first thing in the morning. And Briggs shot him, Marcus said. Vance swallowed. Torres reached for his phone. Said he was calling it in right then. Briggs drew and fired twice. Center mass. Torres went down. He was dead before he hit the ground. The room was so quiet, Marcus could hear Titan breathing. I was in the corridor when I heard the shots, Vance continued. Briggs radioed me, told me to get in there and clean it up. I had maybe 90 seconds before Cole's team reached the compound. When I got inside, Torres was on the floor and Briggs was already gone, out the back. He told me to stage it as an altercation between Cole and Torres. Why me? Marcus's voice barely held. Why not anyone else? Vance looked at him with something that might have been shame. Because you were the best. Clean record, silver star. The public would believe a hero snapping under pressure. It's a story people want to believe. Makes them feel like nobody's really safe, nobody's really good. If Marcus Cole could do it, anyone could. Marcus closed his eyes. 3 years of agony distilled into a marketing calculation. They hadn't just framed him, they'd weaponized his reputation. Then Cole showed up early, Vance said, with the dog. You came through the east corridor. Titan went straight for Torres, started barking, alerting on the body. You dropped to your knees and tried to save him. That's when I came from behind. Blade into your shoulder. I grabbed your sidearm, fired it once into the wall to create a discharge record, wiped my prints, and put it back in your holster. And Titan saw you, Park said. The dog saw everything. He came at me like a freight train. I barely got clear before backup arrived. But by then the scene was set. Cole was on the ground, bleeding, holding Torres. His weapon had been fired, and the dog was barking at the whole area. At Cole, at me, at the doorway where Briggs had exited. But all anyone saw was a dog barking at his handler over a dead body. They thought Titan was accusing Marcus, Park whispered. That's exactly what the prosecution argued. Played the body cam footage 14 times. Made the jury watch a loyal dog apparently turning on his master. Nobody stopped to ask what the dog was really saying, Titan whined. A low, mournful sound that made every person in the room feel something crack inside their chest. The old German shepherd pressed against Marcus's legs and looked up at him with eyes that carried 3 years of helpless silence. Marcus knelt. His chains clinked against the floor. He took Titan's head in both hands, thumbs resting against the dog's graying cheeks. I know, boy, he whispered. I know you tried. You tried to tell them. Titan pressed his forehead against Marcus's chest, hard, insistent, the way he used to after a mission gone wrong, when the world was loud and broken, and the only thing that made sense was the two of them sitting together in the quiet. Graves turned to Briggs. The commander stood motionless, flanked by guards, his face a mask of carved stone. But beneath the surface, in the faint tremor at the corner of his mouth, in the vein pulsing at his temple, in the way his fingers curled and uncurled against his thighs, the mask was crumbling. Commander Gerald Briggs, Graves said, voice heavy and measured. Based on the testimony of Staff Sergeant Dominic Vance, corroborated by canine scent identification, and the recovered memory of the condemned, I am placing you under detention pending investigation for the murder of Sergeant Ryan Torres.
conspiracy to obstruct justice, and the wrongful conviction of Petty Officer Marcus Cole. Briggs' nostrils flared. This won't hold. Vance is a liar. Cole is a convict. And the dog— He looked at Titan. The dog stared back, unblinking, immovable. The dog is an animal. That animal, Marcus said, rising slowly, carried the truth for 3 years when no human had the courage to. Briggs said nothing. The guard stepped forward. One reached for Briggs' wrists. Briggs pulled back instinctively, muscles tensing, jaw locked, and for one razor-thin second, the room balanced on the edge of violence. Titan growled. One note, low and final. The growl of a soldier who had drawn his line. Briggs's shoulders dropped. The guards cuffed him. The steel clicked shut. And Commander Gerald Briggs, decorated officer, 30-year veteran, architect of an empire built on blood and lies, stood in chains in the same room where he had sent an innocent man to die. Marcus didn't speak, didn't gloat, didn't cry. He just looked down at Titan, still pressed against his leg, still guarding him, still refusing to leave. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole allowed himself to believe that the world might still contain something worth surviving for. The cuffs clicked on Briggs and something shifted in the room that had nothing to do with metal or locks. It was the weight. 3 years of it, pressing on Marcus's chest, bending his spine, crushing the air from his lungs, one slow day at a time, lifted. Not all at once, not completely, but enough that when he took his next breath, it didn't hurt. Graves holstered his radio and turned to Marcus. The warden's face carried something Marcus hadn't seen directed at him since the night they dragged him out of that compound. Respect. Cole, based on the confessions and evidence presented in this room, your execution is permanently suspended. Effective immediately, you are no longer classified as a condemned inmate. JAG will formally overturn your conviction within days. Marcus heard the words, understood them, but his body didn't know what to do with them. Freedom was a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Did you hear me, Cole? Yes, sir. You're a free man. Marcus looked down at his wrists. The chains were still there. Womack stepped forward, key already in hand, and knelt. The locks clicked open, one at a time. Left wrist, right wrist, left ankle, right ankle. The steel fell away and hit the concrete with a sound like bones dropping. Marcus flexed his fingers, rolled his wrists, stared at the bare skin where the metal had been, red-marked and raw, like his body was still expecting the weight to come back. Sir? A young guard approached, nervous, holding a bottle of water. Do you need anything? Medical? Food? We can— I need to stay with my dog. The guard looked at Graves. Graves nodded. Titan will remain with you throughout the investigation. He's a material witness now. Titan barked once, sharp and proud. Parks smiled through wet eyes and loosened her grip on the leash. The old German shepherd walked to Marcus and sat beside him. Not in front, not behind, but beside. Right hip pressed against Marcus's left leg. The position they'd held on 1,000 missions. The position that said, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Marcus placed his hand on Titan's head. The fur was coarser than he remembered, thinner in places. Gray where there used to be black. But the warmth was the same. The steady heartbeat beneath his palm was the same. The loyalty was the same. You waited for me, Marcus whispered. 3 years, and you never stopped waiting. Titan leaned into him harder, releasing a sound that wasn't quite a bark and wasn't quite a whine. Something in between. Something that sounded like, finally. Across the room, Briggs sat cuffed between two guards, his face gray, his posture collapsed. The ribbons on his chest, commendations for valor, leadership, distinguished service, caught the light every time he breathed. Medals earned on the backs of lies. Medals that would be stripped, one by one, when the truth finished its work. Vance sat against the opposite wall, head down, arms limp in his cuffs. He hadn't spoken since his confession. Hadn't looked up. He was a man who had traded his future for survival 3 years ago, and was only now understanding the price. Graves approached Marcus one more time. "Cole, the Attorney General's office will want a statement. Formal. On record. There are reporters already gathering outside. Word travels fast in a military prison. You don't have to speak to them today if you're not ready." Marcus scratched behind Titan's ear. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. "I'll speak." "You sure?" "The world spent 3 years hearing lies about me. They deserve to hear the truth from me. Not from a lawyer, not from a press release. From me." Graves studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange it." The next hour moved in fragments. JAG investigators arrived, 3 of them, stone-faced, carrying briefcases and recording equipment. They separated Vance and Briggs into different rooms. Body camera footage was downloaded and logged. Vance's confession was recorded again, formally, with a military attorney present. Briggs refused to speak. His silence didn't matter. The evidence had its own voice now. A military doctor examined Marcus's shoulder. The puncture wound, old, healed over, mislabeled as shrapnel in his medical file, was photographed, measured, and documented. The doctor looked at Marcus with an expression that mixed professionalism with something harder to name. "This wound is consistent with a fixed-blade combat knife. Entry angle suggests an attack from behind and above. It was never shrapnel." "I know," Marcus said. "Why didn't anyone catch this during the trial?" "Because the man who controlled the investigation was the man who needed it buried." The doctor said nothing else. He finished his notes and left. Park found Marcus sitting in the corridor outside the holding room, Titan lying across his feet. She sat down beside him. Neither spoke for a while. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists between people who have shared something so heavy that words feel too small to carry it. "He never forgot you," Park said finally. "I want you to know that." Marcus looked at her. "When I first got him, he wouldn't eat for a week, wouldn't respond to commands, wouldn't sleep. He'd just sit by the door and stare at it, like he was waiting for someone to walk through." Her voice thickened. "I didn't know who he was waiting for, until today." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked down at Titan. The dog was asleep now, truly asleep, his body relaxed in a way Park had never seen before. Legs stretched out, breathing deep and even. No twitching, no whimpering, no nightmares. "He used to have nightmares," Park said, as if reading Marcus's thoughts. "Every night. He'd jerk awake, bark at the walls, pace for hours. The vet said it was PTSD. I tried everything. Medication, therapy protocols, white noise. Nothing worked." She paused. "I think he wasn't having nightmares about the mission. He was having nightmares about losing you." Marcus pressed his palm flat against Titan's ribs and felt the steady rise and fall. "We're even then. I had the same nightmares about losing him." Park stood up, brushed off her uniform, and unclipped the leash from Titan's collar. She held it out to Marcus. "He's yours. He was always yours." Marcus took the leash. The leather was worn smooth from 3 years of someone else's hands. But the weight of it, the familiar pull, the connection it represented, hit him harder than any blow he'd ever taken. "Thank you," he said, "for taking care of him." "Thank him. He's the one who saved your life." She walked away without looking back. Military people were like that. They said what needed saying and moved on. Emotion was a luxury you processed later, alone, when the mission was done. But Marcus saw her wipe her eyes as she turned the corner. They brought Marcus his old belongings in a cardboard box. 3 years of a man's life reduced to a 12 by 12 container. His watch stopped at 11:47. His wallet empty except for a military ID that had been voided with a red stamp. His dog tags scratched and dull. And at the bottom, a photograph. Marcus pulled it out with trembling fingers. The edges were worn soft, the colors faded. But the image was clear. Him and Titan. Day 1 of canine training. Marcus was 26, lean, sunburned, grinning with the reckless confidence of a young SEAL who believed the world made sense. Titan was barely a year old, all paws and ears and nervous energy, pressed against Marcus's leg like he was afraid to be more than 6 inches away. Marcus turned the photo over. On the back, in his own handwriting, faded but legible, were 4 words he'd written the day they became partners. "Where you go, I go." He stared at the words until they blurred. Graves appeared at the end of the corridor.
"Cole, the press is ready. You sure about this?"
Marcus stood. Titan woke instantly, rising beside him in one fluid motion. Stiff, slow, but steady. The dog looked up at Marcus, waiting for the signal. The same look he'd given before every mission. "Ready when you are." "Let's go, boy." They walked together toward the front entrance. Guards lined the corridor, not as escorts, not as captors, but as something Marcus didn't expect. Witnesses. Some of them nodded as he passed. One of them, the younger guard who had muttered, "Never seen one this calm," a lifetime ago, straightened to attention as Marcus walked by. He didn't salute. Marcus was still technically in prison clothes, but the gesture was there, unmistakable, in the way he squared his shoulders and lifted his chin. Marcus reached the front entrance. The steel door, the one prisoners never walk through, the one reserved for the living, stood open. Morning light poured through, bright and warm and almost painful after 3 years of fluorescent gray. Titan pressed against Marcus's leg as they stepped through. The air hit Marcus's face, and he stopped. Just stopped. Breathed in. The scent of grass and diesel and something clean that he couldn't name. Freedom didn't smell like anything specific. It smelled like everything at once. Reporters waited behind a barricade. Cameras flashed. Microphones jutted forward like weapons. They had come expecting a condemned killer's final transport. They got something else. Marcus walked to the microphones. Titan sat at his right side, ears forward, chest proud, tail still. The old soldier on his last and greatest mission. Marcus cleared his throat. His hands were steady. His voice, when it came, was the clearest it had been in 3 years. "My name is Marcus Cole. For 3 years you were told I murdered my teammate, my brother, Sergeant Ryan Torres. You were told I betrayed my oath, my team, and my country. Every headline, every broadcast, every article painted me as a traitor." He paused, looked down at Titan. "But the truth didn't die with my conviction. It survived, in the memory of a dog who was there that night. A dog who saw what no one else saw. A dog who tried to tell the world what happened, but nobody listened, because he couldn't speak." Marcus's voice thickened. He fought through it. Titan carried that truth for 3 years. While I sat in a cell counting cracks in the ceiling, he remembered. While the men who killed Ryan Torres collected their medals and signed my death warrant, Titan remembered. He never forgot the scent. He never forgot the betrayal. And today, when they brought him to me for what was supposed to be a final goodbye, he didn't say goodbye. He spoke. And the truth finally came out. A reporter called from the back. "What will you do now, Mr. Cole?" Marcus looked at the horizon. Light stretched across the sky in long golden lines. "I'm going home," he said. "I don't know where that is yet, but as long as he's with me." He rested his hand on Titan's head. The dog leaned into his palm, eyes closing. "It'll be home." Titan barked once, loud and clear and proud. Marcus stepped away from the microphones. A government car waited, doors open. He climbed in. Titan jumped up beside him, circled once on the seat, and lay down with his head on Marcus's thigh. The door closed. The engine started. The prison shrank in the rearview mirror, growing smaller with every second, until it was nothing but a gray shape against the sky. A place that had tried to break him, tried to silence him, tried to erase him from the world. It failed. Because loyalty doesn't forget. Truth doesn't die. And the bond between a man and his dog, forged in blood, tested by fire, buried under 3 years of injustice, doesn't break. Not by lies, not by chains, not by death itself. Marcus looked down at the photograph one more time. Him and Titan. Day 1. 4 words on the back. Where you go, I go. It was never just a promise. It was the only truth that mattered.